Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Dutch Live at Stream. I'm Joe Spector. I'm the founder and CEO of Dutch. We're an online veterinary telehealth service. And I have with me Dr. Kate Elden, our Chief Medical Officer. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi there. I'm Dr. Kate Elden, a licensed veterinarian and the Chief Medical Officer here at Dutch.
We have a special guest. Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
We're both excited to introduce you, David. You've just got to take the reins.
Okay, I'll take it. Yeah. Nice to meet everybody. I'm David Haworth. I'm a veterinarian up in Bozeman, Montana. I've had a career throughout veterinary animal health industry. Spent several years at Pfizer Animal Health before it became Zoetis. Then I was lucky enough to be CEO at Morris Animal Foundation, which is the largest research charity specifically devoted to veterinary science. And then I worked at PetSmart for 4 years, being the president of their charities. And then I was lucky enough to co-found a genomic diagnostics company called Vidium Animal Health that was sold to Anavive. And since then, worked at Embark as their head of science and business development. All along the way, I've been able to work on nonprofit boards, for-profit boards, advise small companies as they come up, and practice some veterinary medicine on the side, which is fun to keep in touch with the whole spectrum of what we can do as veterinarians.
And yeah, I can't wait to have a chat. You have so much experience, especially in the human-animal bond that you talk so often about. Before we get to that, for those tuning in for the first time, and they may not even know what Dutch is, we provide online veterinary care night and day. So you can have a call like this with real veterinarians. A lot of times our veterinarians establish a VCPR, which for those who are not veterinarians may not know what that is. That stands for virtual veterinary client-patient relationship. And it basically, tied to today's episode, it starts to create a relationship with your veterinarian. And I think today, Dr. Hawthorne, Dr. Kate, and I are going to just ask as much questions to share the wealth of knowledge that you have. Maybe starting off, talk about what is the human-animal bond?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of a broad topic, and really it's like saying, what is love? I think, Joe, it's really, at the end of the day, it's that feeling that we have associated with animals in general, but in particular the pets that we have. And I really think we sort of do ourselves a disservice when we just say human animal bond. It's the best term that we have, but it's a human dog bond, which is different than a human cat bond, which is different than a human horse bond or human wildlife bond. But the bond that we feel, particularly with our dogs and cats, just if we take numbers into place, is something sort of unique in our world, and it's been rapidly changing. I think, just not to belabor the point or be too verbose, but I like to think of the relationship that we have with our pets as sort of perpetually pediatric, meaning that when I had 2 human children, along with my wife, our job was to raise those children to go away, right? So one of the things we wanted to do, we love them very much. They're fantastic human beings, but we wanted to raise them to be productive members of society and leave our house. That's just not the deal that we've got with our pets. Every dog or cat that I've had in our lives, I think I'm somewhere in the 15 to 18 number. The deal with them is from the moment I bring them into my home to the moment usually I have to make the decision it's time for them to go on, is my job to make sure that they're well fed, loved, sheltered. And that bond is incredibly complex and challenging, and it's different for each person and culturally influenced, and all this fascinating stuff about how we live with these animals on a day-to-day basis. So long answer.
I love the point about it's like describing love and that it's definitely different. I can tell you, maybe this is me being an immigrant, but one reason I had children is so that they take care of me when I'm old. So
Again, I keep looking at my golden retrievers and saying, "Hey, are you guys gonna? Where's the love?" And they're like, "We'll do our best, Dad." But I don't know.
I really love that call out of like the perpetual pediatric relationship, because like it's like we love and then we let go, and maybe they come back and help take care of us. But yeah, pets, I mean, we love them to love them and to keep them in our homes forever. And we benefit from that all along the way. I'm remembering the Human Animal Bond Research Institute, HABRI, put out a number. I think it was like $11.7 billion that the US economy saves because pets keep people out of, or they improve people's health care and keep people out of hospitals. Am I quoting that right, David?
Yeah, absolutely. And most of that is cardiac, because the American Heart Association's come out saying that pets are a cardioprotective thing in our world. Even though I think sometimes they break our hearts as much as they help them. But thank you for bringing that up, Kate. The HABRI, the Human Animal Bond Research Institute, was a brainchild of three of us back in 2010, and it's really just it's a great example of cross-industry collaborations. Like, it's Human Animal Bond is what so much of our companies, but really many of our lives and careers, are just based on this fundamental structure of the way we relate to our animals and what people need to have and want to have when it comes to that. So, but we don't know very much about it. And so as a result, we wanted to put together an organization that kind of explores the science of the human animal bond. And I think Steve and the team at HABRI have done a fantastic job. It's fun to watch something that you had a little piece of at the beginning to grow into what it's been.
Do you think the bond, or what are some ways that the bond is different between dogs versus between cats?
Yeah, this is something I've struggled is the wrong word. I think I've contemplated for so many years. I love both dogs and cats, but it is true that it's a fundamentally different relationship, and we can fall on all the cliches. Cats choose us. We don't choose them. Dogs are more than happy to see you. Cats, they're most of the time they are. But I think in general, cats are a quieter, sort of more individualized relationship, whereas dogs are in overlapping bell curves, but in general, dogs are a more public and extroverted kind of a relationship that we have. And I mean, they're both beautiful, but they are different. And it's kind of fun to think about the differences between those.
Do you think the gender of cat dog also plays a role into it, or no?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to somebody about a Pomeranian dog the other day, and they were like, "Well, it's really a cat, but it's just genetically a dog, but it's a cat." And then sort of vice versa. I was with a Maine Coon cat last night, and that's a dog. I mean, a Maine Coon it's loud. It comes up, it headbutts you when it can, and so it's. I think the female, male, which breed. That's why these are overlapping bell curves of expectations and relationships. But yeah, it is very interesting. And I've got a male and a female golden retriever who share our house now, and it's. The male is just every stereotypical knucklehead that you can imagine. I mean, he literally will come and barrel into you because he's so happy to see you. And our female golden is much more demure, and she likes to sit around, and she likes you to come to her. And they're both beautiful and lovely, and the bond is extremely strong between all of them. But it's between us and each of them. But it's different, right? And I think when you start to explore that, tease that apart, and from a healthcare and perspective, you really do want to it's just you need to respect the differences in individual nature of each one of those, right?
It's like healthcare, and it's when they show signs, right? Because like you just said, based on their predisposition, you might feel one is okay when maybe they're not okay because they're more demure, like you mentioned.
Totally.
And vice versa, where, if someone is always headbutting you, then you're also probably more likely to touch them and kind of notice signs of what's going on.
Oh, I mean, I think, not to fold in telemedicine too overtly here, but I mean, the fact that cats are so under medicalized, for a couple of big reasons, but I would say to top line reasons cats rarely get the veterinary care that they need is, one, it's very difficult to get a cat to want to go someplace. Open up the car door and see which animal of yours jumps in first is probably not going to be your cat. And then secondly, cats are evolutionarily this very strange mixture of a predator and prey. And so as a result, prey species tend to hide their illnesses. And, if they feel bad, they don't come out and tell you they feel bad. Just to your point, Joe, they go into a closet and you don't see them for a couple of days. And then you realize, oh, maybe something is wrong here. And so, I think from a health and veterinary perspective, cats pose particular challenges for getting into and having veterinarians be able to lay their hands upon when they're feeling bad.
And I tell pet parents also, like, that they should know, because there's definitely more than anything, like breed variations, right? Less like, because you said like a Maine Coon's like a dog, and like a Shiba Inu can be really aloof like a cat.
Totally.
And maybe not all, so but
right, these are generalizations, but yeah,
generalizations. But what I tell pet parents is the most important thing for them to do is to know their own pet, know their own pet's behaviors, know their routines. I encourage people actually to not free feed, but to feed designated amounts so that they can tell when their pet's appetite is off. So they know their own animal well. So when something changes, like their scale is their own pet. They're not measuring against something else. And it's the same, like it sounds subjective, but we can make these kind of their normal routines at home pretty objective, just like we make laboratory work objective. You compare trends over time. I think that's the most important message for pet parents is like, no, you're the expert of your own animal, know them well. And so if they're normally a head butter and they're like waking you up at 7 a.m., like jumping on your face in the morning, and then they stop doing that all of a sudden, then, maybe something's off.
Yeah, that's I think that's a great highlight of that spectrum that animals live within, and what is normal for my one dog would be absolutely abnormal and a big red flag for my other dog. And like you said, no veterinarian in person, on the phone, whatever, is going to be able to know when your dog is not doing well. And I think that shows up clinically too. Okay, I'm sure you've seen enough of ADR dogs where people bring their pet in or reach out to care because the dogs just ain't doing right. And and literally in the medical records, it's an ADR visit because the dog ain't doing right. What's going on? Well, she's just not acting herself. Okay, well, she's not going to tell me what's wrong. So now I have to go use the clinical judgment, all the tools that we have in our hands to try to help find out what's going on. Is she off?
It's one of my favorite acronyms. ADR.
Yeah, mine too. ADR. All the human physicians don't get that one. They're like, what do you mean?
ADR.
What, Dr. Hawthorne, what drew you to this field in the first place? You could have gone down anything, but you've definitely are quite prolific, and clearly it's an area of passion and at this point expertise. But like what piqued your interest about this specific area of veterinary care?
I think, Joe, well, thank you. I'm not sure I could have done anything. I sort of oftentimes think this is the only thing I ever could have done. But I think, like most veterinarians, I wanted to be one from a very small age. My parents tell me that I was telling them I was going to be a veterinarian when I was 4. And, interestingly enough, my mother was very allergic to animals. And of course, this is in the 70s. She couldn't have any pets inside. So we had a few outdoor cats, but I was just incessant with them. And then I think veterinary medicine, like many professions, is a series of filters that you go through. I liked science. I liked the idea of healing. I didn't really want to heal people. I like people. I married one, been married to her for 37 years. We raised 2 of them. I have lots of human friends. But I never really thought it would be fun to help people directly in that sense. It's always been, it'd be much more fun to help. And not to get too philosophic about it, one thing I like to tell veterinary students, and as I think you and most of our listeners probably know, there's a challenge in veterinary medicine, particularly among young veterinarians, of trying to find their purpose. And it's a high rate of burnout. So it's a high degree of compassion fatigue. And I try to tell them that never forget that every society in history has valued healers, those who put their energies and time and resources to healing others. And we as veterinarians get to be healers of the innocent. And I think that's extraordinarily laudable. And so what's attracted me to the profession, I think in varying ways, is having some kind of impact on different living things that in my mind, are pretty innocent. I mean, I've met a lot of scary animals, but I've never met an evil one. And I wish I could say that about our species, but I don't think I can.
Any stories from your own dogs that kind of capture what this means to you?
Yeah, so a million, and thank you for giving me the opportunity, but I won't. I'll try to be brief. We have had so many amazing interactions with our dogs that share our lives, and it's a kind of, I don't know other professions who get to do this. I don't know if painters get to really get excited about the painting that they have in their house, but in my world, I get to go home frequently and get reminded of how cool it is of what we do. I think probably a specific story. My mother was taken from us in 2012 after a 16-year strong bout with cancer. And so she fought like crazy. And my mother was an extraordinary person in so many ways. I know everybody's mother was, but my mother was raised in the Black Hills of South Dakota, very poor, got a full ride scholarship to Stanford, 2 master's degrees and a PhD in economics in an age when women just didn't do that. And but as I mentioned, she was very allergic to animals. She loved animals, always wanted to be around them, but couldn't because she was pretty miserable about 3 minutes after the physical interaction. We had a dog named Luna, who's a yellow Labrador, who, I would give her great credit for raising the 2 kids that we have, because, when my wife and I couldn't be there, Luna was always there. She's always on the bed, always walking them. She was the dog who would get on the school bus and then, walk up and down the aisles and then come back down just to make sure everybody was good. Well, my mother was getting in her final stages. She got very sick. We had to go down to Florida where she lived to be with her. And the day we left, Luna broke with some pretty serious vomiting, diarrhea, sort of general illness, and she was 12. We ended up having to euthanize her the same day as my mother passed. And, I like to say I've cried in lots of airports, but nothing like the day that I landed in Atlanta and I'm having to be on one phone. My older brother called to say my mother had passed. I was actually on the way back to Tallahassee. And at the same time, I'm on the phone with one phone on the one ear. My wife is on the other ear of our dog as she's being euthanized. those are crushing stories. And I don't mean to bring the story down, but just the idea that those two beautiful beings were leaving this earth at the same time really tore at us, because it allowed us to grieve for them together. And some people might say, hey, David, you shouldn't be grieving for your 14-year-old yellow lab the same way as you're grieving for your mother. But they were connected, and that grief helped us along. And, maybe in some version of this story, they were able to be together, and my mother was finally able to have the dog she needed. So don't know if that's what you were looking for, but that's the story. That's the story of the human animal bond when I start thinking about it.
I've had like so many stories. Thank you for sharing that. I'll start by saying that is like an incredible, touching story. And I'm so sorry about your mom. She sounds really like an amazing woman. And just as we were starting to talk about her, I was like, another Dolly Parton.
In many ways. Yep.
Yes. So very cool. And that connection between people and animals, I've been doing this long enough where I've seen so many of those where like the pets are diagnosed with the same condition as the pet parent within weeks, or just like, I'm like, it's wild to me how things line up like that. And just want to highlight how important that bond is and how sometimes it shows up in wild ways.
Yeah, I'm a card-carrying scientist, right? So we're supposed to be very skeptical about stuff like that. But I've also lived long enough to be awed by that kind of miraculous thing. I'll give you a statistic. Again, this was one of the Habry studies that for long-term couples, humans, when one died, for lots of reasons, the life expectancy of the surviving partner is quite short. Oftentimes these are older people to begin with, et cetera, but there's a lot of confounding factors. But if they have a dog, and this is important because it's not a cat, if they have a dog, their life expectancy more than doubles. And, you could, of course, it's one of those confirmatory science stories that you think, well, yeah, that makes sense. If I'm in the depths of grief, I could lay in bed all day, right? Unless I've got a golden retriever who's pushing my foot saying, hey, listen, I'm sad too, but I need to go outside and you need to feed me. Like, we need a schedule to come back, and humans need that touch point, not just to grieve together, and that extraordinary ability for animals to give you non-judgmental support and emotional empathy, but also I need a schedule. Humans need schedules to got to get up. You got to keep moving forward and move through that process of grieving. I think the different aspects of the human animal bond are just fascinating, and of course I think that's a big one.
I love that example, that having a dog, especially at that age in life where you might lose your partner, is just so. I'm thinking about the people that I love in my life, and how I wish that for them. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that one.
Yeah, I think it's one of the tragedies sometimes when you talk to people about their pets and they say, well, I'm X age, so I'm not going to get another pet when this one passes. And I'm always like, no. Can we find a solution for that? Because
yeah, I thank you for bringing that up, because I hear that a lot. Like, oh, I don't want to get a dog because I don't want, they're going to outlive me. And I'm like, hey,
maybe
you really should. Like, I'm the kind of person that adopts the senior dog. There are more of me out there. Like, we need to unpack that, because it's having a dog late in life can be so good for your health. Yeah.
I have my father who survived. My mother passed in 2012, as I mentioned, but my father, who turns 90 next year, had his first dog as an adult. Like, I think they got her 8 years ago. She's a little golden, little poodle doodle, like about this big, fun sized. And I've watched it. I mean, he gets up and walks. He's always been an active guy, but he has to engage in the world. He goes out and sees people at the dog park every day, reinforcing that community, which is so important for all of us in terms of longevity and good living and great health spans. And that's all just because he's got this little dog who's Ziva, who forces him to get up and go. It's fun. Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, it's at all stages.
So we talked about cats and dogs so far, but Dr. Kate, we'd be remiss if we don't talk about horses.
I know. So I was thinking about this when we were having this conversation earlier. So, and I gotta say, I love mules. Like when people ask me what's your favorite animal, I say a mule every single time because I just they're just like such amazing creatures and I love them so much. If you don't know what a mule is a cross between a horse and a donkey. So every mule's mom is a horse and the dad is a donkey. And they're sterile, so they can't breed. But mules are really special in that they've got the like athleticism of a horse, but they also have the sense of self-preservation of a donkey. And they bond, at least in my experience, mules will bond to people. Like my mule Iris that I packed with in the mountains. I did horse and mule packing in the Eastern Sierras for many years. And Iris would follow me around like a dog and she would sleep next to my bedroll at night. And she even like, I was asleep and I woke up to Iris chasing away a bear one day. So like definitely the bond can be there. I also had a beautiful buckskin mare when I was in vet school. And thinking about, this is when we were talking about like gender versus breeds.
Yeah.
I think in horses, I do notice a real maternal kind of behavior from mares. And definitely this mare that I had, so this was when I was in vet school and we lived right next to, like, I lived on this ranch right next to a housing development. And I would take my mare for walks and like let the kids pet her. And on Halloween, I took her out. And she was a really calm horse, but there were all these kids in costumes would have freaked out like 99.9% of horses. And she did kind of spook at this one adult, but for the kids, she put her head down low, which is the behavior. It's the nonverbal communication from the horse being like, I'm being submissive, right? Like, you know, and she would let these kids just kind of move around her. And I've seen that from a lot of mares. So the bond is there between horses. The bond, I mean, I'm at a loss for words because I had my own lived experience of how important horses were for me growing up and teaching me how to be calm and confident.
Yeah.
Like horses love a calm, confident leader. And that's how you communicate with them. And that's a great lesson to learn when you're a kid growing up, and they communicate through body language and nonverbal communication. And a lot of us don't think about our own body language all the time. We're such verbal communicators as humans, but pets, and especially horses, like you can get a horse to, you know, lay down. Like I taught my horse to lay down with a hand movement.
Oh, how cool. And she did it because she trusted you.
And she did it. Yeah. We had this connection, you know, we had spent so many hours together in the mountains and all around town. Yeah.
Let me tell you, there's another study that was investigating hippotherapy or horse therapy. And in this case, particularly for victims of domestic abuse. I think it was about 40 people in the study, 39 of them women, who had undergone pretty horrific domestic partner abuse. And the program used horses to build those people back up. And as you said, horses need confidence, but also inspire confidence, because once you bond from an authentic way with a horse, it gives itself to you. And for the testimonies, I'll apologize. I usually get choked up whenever I try to tell this. The testimonies of these women who had basically been powerless and had everything taken from them, being able to gain the trust and gain control to some degree, or being given control by these 1,200-pound animals, was so empowering for them that it, as opposed to other forms of therapy, just leapfrogged their ability to function again and feel the confidence to come back into society. Amazing.
That's so
And nothing, like, no cat could have done that, I think. Is back to it's species specific, right? You know, no matter how much your cat would love you, you don't feel like, oh my gosh, this powerful, amazing thing that could crush anything in its path just gave all that power to me.
Mm-hmm. It's a 1,000-pound animal, and once you create that connection, they see people as their protectors. I will listen, I will follow. And to be able to pick yourself back up and show, like, oh, when I put my shoulders back and I walk confidently and stand up straight, I have this like life that's supporting me, following me. It's like, it's so powerful. I worked with neurodivergent kids, so I have a brother with a disability, and we did therapeutic riding programs with him too. It was incredible to just see people. It's so empowering.
Yeah.
when you can work with this animal and connect with them. So
it's incredible. And by the way, of course you know this, but most of the early mountain men preferred to have mules to ride on because they were much tougher and much smarter, and they could always get out of bad situations than the horses would. So
the owner of the pack station that I worked with was a veterinarian from UC Davis, my alma mater, and he went on this tangent. One summer, he made all of the packers ride mules for a while because, like, I think there was this impression that riding a horse was like cooler in some way or whatever, but he wanted people to have that experience, the packers to have that experience. And it was just, I'm really glad he forced us to do that. It was incredible because they are more sure-footed.
Yeah.
Like they will, if they're stepping out onto ground that doesn't feel safe for them, they won't go.
We've spent a lot of time. I spent over 100 nights under the rim of the Grand Canyon. And of course, the mules in the Grand Canyon, there's no question that they're going to use horses. Of course, they're not. Horses couldn't make it down those trails and back up again on the same day. It's just mules are special animals. It's
they're
cool.
Incredible animals. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to play a quick game to spice things up. So, Dr. Haworth, you've also been doing ER, Dr. Kate, telemedicine. You've both been doing in person. So I'm going to ask rapid fire questions, and we were going to say, is this for telemedicine in person, or do you go to ER?
Love it.
Okay, so we'll start with an easy one. Fleas and ticks with an otherwise healthy dog.
Oh, absolutely ER.
Can you imagine?
Have
you had like, what is something actually in ER like that where someone shows up and it's like, why are you here?
No, that's actually funny. You should ask that question, Joe. It's one of the reasons. So when I've always loved both corporate strategy and that kind of thing, but I do love clinical medicine, and I love ER for my personality. But one of the reasons that I really love ER work is that it's almost never trivial. And even if it is, to be clear, it's not trivial to the owner. Yes, we charge a lot. For you to walk in that door at my clinic that I'm working here in Montana, it's $200 to walk in the door. And for that, you get a physical exam. Anything else that I've got to do also adds to those charges. And so, the bills can add up, but it's very, very rare. Just just this morning at around 2 a.m, I saw a case of a beautiful pit bull who was perfectly fine, smelled like hell because she had encountered, as they were camping down in the Bighorn Mountains, and she had encountered and then decided to dispatch a skunk, but not without getting a spray in the process. Now, her eyes were a little irritated. She sneezed once, and out came a good whiff of skunk. And those of you who haven't enjoyed that particular smell, I still have it in the back of my nose. I could try to describe it for you. But she had a tiny scratch, and it didn't break the skin. Now, sometimes people would say, well, that was trivial. And I will tell you, absolutely not, because those owners were scared and they didn't know the right protocols, because skunks, as we all know, but maybe your listeners don't, are a main carrier of rabies. And so the owners needed to come in for someone to look at them. And I helped them walk through what the danger was, what they need to look for. Of course, this animal was perfectly safe because the skunk did not get their teeth into the dog, but the dog certainly got their teeth into the skunk. But it just the non-trivial nature. So flea and tick medications for an otherwise healthy animal who's not got complaints, and this is just a renewal. That's exactly, in my mind, exactly a cause for telemedicine and helping people avoid the time, the inconvenience, the stress on the animal, and the expense of having to go see a veterinarian in person. Maybe Kate feels differently.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I was reflecting on my early years. I had some incredible mentors early in practice that are just like patriarchs of the equine veterinary profession. And they taught me early on that if the pet parent perceives it as an emergency, it is an emergency because of that human animal bond. So, like that is like, it's in my blood. So I'm with you on that. And then bringing it back to the flea tick preventative, that is like a perfect use case for telemedicine. I mean, and I think like the recent screwworm outbreak, I want to scream from the rooftops, like, help us give people access to care where they need it the most. Because, and I want to be clear, like, we are all in favor of routine physical exams for pets. The goal for telemedicine is to complement that. But the reality is that, sometimes it's hard for people to get in for physical exams. And that shouldn't mean that they don't get their parasite preventative, because who suffers in that? It's the pet. Right. So we should be sending the message to pet parents that we want to help you. And I think flea and tick medications through telemedicine, it's like the chef's kiss use case.
Right. Joe, you said this was going to be a lightning round, but I'm not going to let it happen because I had one more point I wanted to make on.
I love it.
So when I was lucky enough to be the president of PetSmart's Charities division. And for those of you who don't know, PetSmart Charities gives away about $75 million of grants a year to shelters and rescues. And one of the big emphases that we made while I was there was around access to care. And I think something that was not easy for me to understand through the rest of my background was how difficult it is, particularly for people in low income groups, to access care. And I've had knockdown, drag out arguments around the idea that if you can't afford a pet, you shouldn't have a pet. My answer is pets outlive all my income streams. And 74% of the United States population has lived underneath the poverty line for at least 1 year of their lives. So does that mean I just couldn't have a pet during that year? Or was that was vet school, by the way, if anyone was guessing. I definitely, we were underneath the poverty line during vet school. But does it mean only, I have to take pets when I have high levels of income and then give them back when we fall into harder times, which is of course a ridiculous thought. But it wasn't around economic ability and access. It wasn't around fiscal access to care. It was around logistics access to care. I work 9 to 5 the vet practice is open from 8:30 to 5:30, and I can't get my pet in there in any kind of reasonable manner. In an emergency, sure, I can do it because then I'm home. What about the single mom who works 2 jobs and she's just trying to keep an animal in the house for the kids so that they're learning all those incredible things around the human animal bond, not to mention security and alertness and all the other things that pets bring us. So to punish those people by saying you need to find the one veterinarian in your town who can be open late at night. I always think exactly what you just said, Kate. It's punishing the pet and not doing anything for either the human animal bond or the veterinary profession. We're not helping ourselves by guilting people that they meet us where we want to be. And instead, we're not meeting them where they need us to meet them.
We have some interesting questions from the audience. And by the way, for anyone listening live, please send more questions. We have these 2 awesome experts. Also, the first question from Jeanette Battle, do I need to see a vet for flea and tick prevention? And maybe for the listener, I would the way I'm reading this question too is maybe distinguish between an over-the-counter flea and tick medication and a prescription medication where you do need to see a veterinarian first.
So there are over-the-counter flea and tick preventatives that people can buy in a pet store. And depending on where you live, they may or may not work. Definitely where I'm at in Southern California, a prescription strength flea and tick product is necessary to really protect a pet against these ectoparasites. And in order to get that prescription, you do need to see a vet, and that could be through telemedicine. That could be through a video virtual appointment, or that could be in person. So if you want it over the counter, you can go to the store if you are in search of a prescription medication. And Dr. Haworth, chime in here, but most veterinarians that I know recommend prescription parasite preventatives over the counter ones.
Yep, sure do. And yep, you sure do. And I think this is an area where telemedicine, as we just talked about, makes just a whole lot of sense in those states where you're allowed immediate access.
We have another question from Sandra Hickey, and she's it's kind of a broader question. She's someone who has feral cats, and I mean, if cats are difficult to get in, and something we see on our side is folks who are even having a hard time with video, period. But there's this question like, why is it against the law to not get medication, when you can't, at least in states where you can establish VCPR virtually, often you need to still be on video. And I think the answer is just because it's otherwise prone for massive abuse.
Right.
And that's just the way laws are written, but it's also meant to protect kind of bad actors. But it is, again, this tough choice where you have good actors who are trying to help. And like I said, I've certainly seen, maybe just actually a bigger point on folks who are trying to help feral cats. Like, how have you all addressed that concern?
I can speak to this one. This happens to me a lot because people are trying to help their pets, and it depends on the situation. Like for feral cats, I love prescribing an oral like Credelio cat that they can give the pet, so they don't have to handle them and put on topically, right? So you can give it as like a treat when the cat is hungry. And in order to do that, I've had pet parents send me videos and pictures of cats, and I use my clinical judgment to decide when I think it's appropriate or when it's not to be able to prescribe to them. Because at the end of the day, like, I took an oath as a veterinarian to relieve animal suffering, and I think that choice is the right choice based on my oath. And it's really hard as a vet to, to have to deal with these kinds of regulations that sometimes make it hard to follow that oath.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think to Sandra's question, we see this a lot with animals that can't be touched. And whether it's wildlife or feral cats or wild Mustangs, how do you administer the kind of care? And the short answer is sometimes you can't. If I've got an animal with a broken leg that I can't get anywhere near safely, maybe euthanasia is the right solution. It's the only way I can relieve suffering, but it's a real challenge, and it comes back to accessibility and affordability of care. We have, Sandra, found some veterinarians who are able and willing to work doing house calls, finding ways to get to the cats, but it's hard. It's an added difficulty, and there are those animals that we just have to recognize we can't get our hands on, so therefore we can't use all of the tools at our disposal.
Unfortunately, we're at time. Thank you so much, Dr. Haworth. I think, like you said at the very top, that describing the human-animal bond is like asking what is love, and that's a topic that can never have an ending. But it was awesome to hear so many of the case studies that you could raise off the cuff to show the importance of the human-animal bond. This was an awesome chat.
Well, thank you, Joe. It's a real joy to be here. And Kate, great to be with you too. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye, guys.